share my screen, I'm assuming.
I'm
First things first, election of chair.
I would like to nominate Gordon Ridgway as chair.
I will second it.
I'm shocked, I'm honored, but I am willing, most importantly, to see this through and yeah, why not?
And I do know at last meeting, one of the questions that did come up from a member of the public was just when we wanted to receive public comment, whether that would be in the beginning of the meeting, at the end of the meeting, or both. And it was decided amongst all of us to wait until a chair was elected and then proceed with our communication policy.
We haven't actually elected the chair yet.
Oh, good
Right,
point.
we've
Anna.
only nominated the chair,
Perfect.
a chair.
We need to
Oh,
vote.
yeah, we need do we have a second yet?
Yes, we do. Anna Tamel was the second.
Great, so,
And I do see Janet just popped on.
Can we call the motion? Janelle?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
Janet, just
sorry.
before, sorry, no, I just wanted to bring Janet up to speed. Janet, just to bring you up to speed, we're on agenda item number 1, election of chair. Jill Cutler has nominated Gordon Ridgway and Anna Tamel has seconded that. And now it's called to a vote. So, and I see Ingrid, hello, you've popped on as well. So without
Heather's
further
here too. Heather's here.
Yes,
Oh.
Heather's here also.
ideal, thank you guys. Hi, Heather.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Heather. So does anyone want to recap where we're at in the agenda, or are we ready to vote the election of the chair?
I say vote.
Okay. I don't mind surveying the screen. I can look. So if all those are in favor, I'm looking for committee members. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. And Heather, I don't want to put you on the spot regarding your vote. I just can't see you.
Sorry, I will soon be on video, but I definitely endorse Gordon.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right, so that motion passed unanimously.
okay, well, thank you all for your support and anyway, I'll try to do a good job, be fair. And the first thing I think we talked about is public comment. I think it's appropriate to have that at the end of the meeting. And again, like all boards and commissions, the housing planning group is open to getting correspondence to be distributed for the meeting. If people want to talk to us about things that are topical. And the first thing we have to discuss is the housing forum, which is scheduled to be via Zoom on May 24th at 7 p.m. The idea is again just to introduce the community to the work that this group has been doing, as well as some other items about housing. So my thought would be that Janelle would bring us up to date with why we're meeting, what we're doing, the state requirements as far as having a housing plan. Then Anna would talk a bit from the P&Z perspective, and again, probably just a couple minutes each. And then maybe Mag can talk somewhat about the what the Housing Corporation is doing. And then I did talk to Beth O'Donnell about giving a a talk. She's building some energy efficient affordable houses in Boston, and has some ideas about that, how the market's changed and things, sort of a somewhat of a faraway view. That would be good. And again, if there's other members of the committee that would like to speak from any particular view or vantage point, they would be welcome. But again, I think if people just talk for a couple of minutes. And then I also am going to try to get someone from the National Iron Bank who they did approach me last fall about setting up a first-time homeowners program. And if they could outline how that would work, that might be good, because I believe they have one in Norfolk that has been successful. So those are sort of what I had thought of. Are there any other thoughts or suggestions? Anybody, again, now or in the lead up, can contact me if they would like to speak. Anyone on the committee. And then again, it's mostly a community dialogue is the idea. So again, if we had 20 minutes of thought-provoking comments, that'd be great. And then the dialogue is usually productive and interesting. So those are my thoughts. And again, I think if we answer these questions that are up on the screen, that would be good, as well as any other ideas people want to bring to the table as far as what's going on. The nature of housing obviously is changing quickly. Talking to contractors in town, they're amazed at the price escalation of building materials. So that's one thing that's happening, because there is a housing boom. And another thing that I read that was sort of interesting the other day was the leading or the hottest housing market presently is Manchester, New Hampshire, which probably has not had that distinction before. But again, it's remote workers from Boston looking to move out of the city for less expensive places, have really influenced the housing market in southern New Hampshire. And it's not unlike what's going on here. I'm sure different in some ways, but you're seeing these areas that had not seen high-priced housing all of a sudden. They said the same thing about Waterbury and Torrington, Connecticut, that they've seen some significant increases in housing costs or prices. So you are seeing some trends and things that are happening throughout the Northeast that are similar to what we're seeing here. So if there's somebody else that wants to comment on that, that would be good. And I thought it also would be interesting if Heather would be willing to talk a little bit about the impact of housing costs on people in Cornwall without mentioning names, the issues that people are facing, trying to keep a roof over their head, are real, as real here as they are in other places. So it might be good just to highlight some of the challenges with renting, home ownership, that kind of stuff. If Heather be willing to go into sort of the personal side of it a little bit without, of course, talking about people in general, but there are certainly trends that are playing themselves out here. So those are some of the thoughts I had just to start out, some of the discussion topics, because it's obviously a complicated subject. And if there are other people that would like to speak, see Anna's hands up. Any other thoughts? Anna.
I just hope that we could frame the public dialogue in such a way so that instead of listening to people talk about how they don't want to see Cornwall change in any way, that we could elicit their creativity in asking them for creative ways to generate both affordable and attainable housing. And that requires a skillful master of ceremonies, if you will, to try and get that kind of feedback from people instead of, no, we don't really want to go down this road. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. I think also one other thought I had that I've forgotten, I just remembered, was I very much like that film that Ted Perotti made about the housing issues in the area, and the fact he went around to towns, our neighboring towns, and highlighted some things. I think it's, and I felt that was a very positive film, very local film, and it was creative. I mean, it showed how people, when they worked hard, came up with some very good solutions in these areas. So I've got to talk to John to see, what do you feel about just showing that at some point during this forum? Because I just thought it was up to date and current. And
Is that the one the Northwest Hills COG sponsors?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's wonderful.
yeah, I mean, it went from Washington, Norfolk to Cornwall to Kent.
Right.
And
Paul's
I
very-
yeah, and I think it did highlight sort of the framework. I mean, it was current, so it highlighted the framework in which we're living. So anyway, we'll see if we can put that in there, maybe, at some point after we, talk comments, and then maybe show the film a little bit or something like that, mix it in there. So I would like to have people see that, because I think it does sort of set a decent backdrop. Not sure whether to do it at the beginning, because we want people to get involved with things early on. But anyway, just a thought.
Only
Yeah,
10 minutes.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes long. Just a thought to share too, for any of the recommended presenters that Chairman Ridgway just went over. I have a lot of slides prepared just because of the material that we've already gone over. So if it helps anyone as far as being a speaker at that event, for me to prepare slides, I'd be happy to do so.
I think visuals are good.
I had a question, Gordon.
Yes.
I was wondering how to discriminate among all the statistical information that's been made available to us over the past couple of months. And I would think one good exercise would be to figure out what are the most, for the forum, you don't want to like drown people in information, but it might be good to decide on which bits of it we think are the most helpful to the discussion, and somehow getting them out as a flyer or something that people could download and print, a 1 or 2 pager, so they had some prompt as they were listening to things. I mean, I'm sitting here in my kitchen and every surface is covered with bits of paper with statistical info on it. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's the most relevant? I mean, when I watched that, the hour-long movie that Jocelyn put together, and the statistic came out there that half of 20 and 30-year-olds in Litchfield County are living with their parents. I mean, to me, that's, I sat through a lot of data, but that also triggered something that made sense, because I know the young people I know, that's what they're doing. So
Right.
again, in that by itself isn't that exciting until you hear that's a national anomaly, that only
Right.
New Jersey has more kids living at home than Connecticut. So what's going on? And same thing. So yeah, maybe Janelle, if you could do a couple of data points or something, then maybe the committee could send it out to the committee and they could say, we want to concentrate on, these half dozen or something as a spot.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask the committee as well. I know it was a few meetings ago that we went over the data assessment, but were there particular slides that were of interest or particular points other than that 40% in Litchfield County living with their parents? Is there anything else that's of particular interest that just springs to mind? I don't mind culling through the data and pulling pieces as well.
I would also be willing to make suggestions about what I thought were the ones that sang to me the most. I mean, just so we have points of view, and then maybe pass them to the other committee members and see if they agree that these are the things that they want to put out there, as well as giving people access to all of it. But I mean, just to have one.
Great. Yeah, I see Janet's hand.
So the best way for people, like most everybody actually, is to look at things like an infographic. It's just, if you can visually explain data, most people don't get data, but if you put it into an infographic, you can glance at the sheet and get that, you understand what it means. And I would be happy to help with that.
Cool.
That's easy enough.
Awesome. So what I can do, I can prepare as I mentioned, the slides that I was thinking of with that background information and then some of the main data points. One that certainly comes to mind for me is just as far as the housing data goes, pertinent to the plan would be the housing cost burden percentage in town, because I think that really feeds into the affordable housing plan. So I can pull together those slides and possibly with Janet's help, make them as visual as possible for the purposes of the presentation. And another interesting one that comes to mind is the demographic data of the aging population and the proportion of the population that's aging. It looks as though it will be quite large by 2040, that colorful slide that was prepared.
So can I jump in and ask, I mean, one thing, I guess a question for all of you is whether, would it be helpful to contextualize some of those data points for Cornwall with, broader regional trends or broader national trends? And I'm not sure the answer to that. So I could certainly pull those together, but I'd be, I just would love your thoughts on whether that would be something that would be useful, or is that just too much? Or is that kind of bigger picture context important or useful?
I think that's good. And some of the stuff that we have is broken down to Cornwall versus Litchfield County versus Connecticut as percentages. And I think that those are useful.
I think it would also be good because then people could actually see that Connecticut, in fact, is one of the most expensive states.
Yeah, because the point is, it's right. This isn't just a Cornwall issue, right?
Yeah, it's not just a Cornwall issue, and it's really expensive.
Yeah,
it's not,
Connecticut is not, has a very poor showing compared to other states in regards to this issue.
49.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think if you could do like I think that'd be really good, because it also takes the pressure off us a little bit, because it's not just a Cornwall problem, but it also makes it more important, because you can go to
other states,
a lot of places. You can go to any part of the world and see rural communities or former rural communities under pressure of kids leaving for the city, and we have our own particular spin on it, and maybe that's accelerated a lot in the last 10 years or 10 months. But I think it doesn't. I think it'd be good to get a little national, regional view on it. And again, having Beth talk a little bit about what's going on in Boston, I think is good, and I think it's good to sort of set the whole stage of what's going on here.
Okay, that's great. Well, I can talk to Janelle about that. And then And then also, I guess that I just wanted to follow up and sort of second something that Anna said, that I think sort of showing making this a kind of a constructive conversation about how to move forward and and I think there are some to that end, and I haven't seen this 10-minute film. I mean, if someone could send us a link, that would be great. But I think there are some, there's some beautiful examples of affordable housing developments that I think would feel that sometimes I think what's, something that what people imagine in the abstract is often a lot worse than what, a well-designed affordable housing development can look like. So I think some actual examples of can be really helpful. And then the other thing I was going to say, I also think that showing some kind of a timeline about sort of the planning process would be useful as well at this meeting, and to clarify. Because in talking to people, some people seem to think we're coming out with a report next month.
So Ingrid, that's a perfect segue, because my next slide is actually this.
Oh, there you go.
So
let's just wrap up. So I think I'll send out a draft agenda of when we confirm our speakers and things and whatever. But I think it will be good. In a way, it's going to be if we have people talk about the big picture, the regional picture, and the local picture, and again, I think that it will be useful and somewhat well organized. So I think it will be good. So anyway, yeah, let's get on to the schedule.
Perfect. So this graphic was prepared just for all of us to get on the same page with how the housing forum is coming into play, and then also where we'll be going from the housing forum, and then when we'll be wrapping it up based on leading all back to our funding. So our funding coming from the Department of Housing. So currently here we are, May 2021, planning for the housing forum. And moving through, it looks like the summer, June and July will really be when, hopefully from the housing forum, we will be taking our strategies and really finalizing and discussing what those housing plan strategies are. So thus far, we've looked at assessment. So we've looked at the data assessment, demographic information pertinent to Cornwall, market information pertinent to the housing market, and the trends over time, especially in light of COVID. And then now we're moving from this housing forum, our public discussion, into more of our housing strategy phase of the project, coming up with what we actually want to put in the plan. Just going back to the goals that were in the plan of conservation development and really outlining how we could potentially get to those goals, put in new strategies, and then finalize our housing plan, keeping in mind that it is a 5-year plan. Something that I know has been a part of the discussion has been thinking through our metrics to make sure that in 5 years, when we revisit this plan to update it, that we have some sort of indicators as to whether or not we've achieved our plan. So definitely getting back to the data and having true metrics for looking at how we'll evaluate how we've done. And then, so just looking through the summer, a lot of drafting for me in August. A lot of the pieces of the plan are just laying the foundation of what's going on. So we've discussed a lot of that. Again, existing affordable housing in town, the zoning assessment as well. So the current zoning regulations as far as what's germane to housing and what's germane to affordable housing. And then all of that can be wrapped into the housing strategies, and then a draft plan review and comment period, it looks like, will occur in the fall, moving into the later fall for that plan finalization and then final adoption. So a pretty aggressive schedule, but definitely a doable schedule, just for everyone to remind ourselves that the final product of this planning process is to get to a municipal affordable housing plan that is now required by state statute 830J. And we're luckily, one of the towns ahead of schedule, it's required to be finalized by spring of 2020, but it looks like we should be done by the end of the year. So in brief, that's our timeline. Does anyone have questions about that?
Just that you misspoke, it's 2021, that the deadline is 2022, is it not, June of 2022?
Yes, the state's deadline is 2022.
Right.
Yeah, it's spring of 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, for all towns within the state of Connecticut to have finalized their plan.
Yeah, I think it's good. Again, having a forum in May and then having another comment period in September, I think that's good. Take, work on getting things organized over the summer, but have some more intensive public comment periods after summer is good.
Great. Any questions, anything to revisit as well, as far as, I know we covered a lot of information. So just to remind everyone, there is the webpage associated with our group with all of the information available. So all of the presentations from past meetings, along with resources that have been shared. So there's a few articles that have been circulated by members of the committee, as well as we have the plan of conservation development up there, the current zoning regulations up there. So that I'll recirculate in an email. That's kind of our container for all of our planning materials. And I'll send out the link to that affordable housing film as well.
I just wanted to comment. I read the article produced by the School and State Finance Project today, a not-for-profit that's been around since 2015. Their piece was quite relevant to me as chair of P&Z, because it was all about how zoning regulations in Connecticut as a whole and elsewhere have gotten in the way of allowing people to access houses and rents that they can afford. There are a lot of things that we could do in a regulatory way that would be helpful in town. I think Jill is very aware of these things as well. Right, Jill?
Yes, yes.
Is that going to have a place in our plan? Are we going to talk about specific zoning proposals?
Well, I think it should.
Right,
should.
okay.
I think it should, yeah.
Some of those proposals are already in the plan of conservation and development, but I think
That's right.
we can talk about some others also.
Or how to make the ones that are there happen.
Yeah, I was
Right.
going to say, we could talk about specific changes to zoning that would make it easier.
Right. I have ideas. I'm sure you do, Jill. Yeah.
And I think Maggie does too, and other people may as well.
Yeah.
And Janelle, if there are things that are not planning and zoning related, such as a first-time home buyers extra loan program or something, we can include those in the plan also. So
Absolutely.
it's not just regulatory changes, but it's things that may go beyond that, or supporting the housing corporation, or that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, especially thoughts around public-private partnerships.
Right.
Department of Housing has been really receptive to the plans, honestly, being a tool for the towns. They're just looking that we have proposals in place to support more affordable housing. That's what they're looking for, but they definitely understand that they truly want these plans to be something that the town can use as either supplemental to the POCD or to truly inform them. So even if it's beyond planning and zoning, if it gets into the private sector, if it gets into a public-private partnership, those suggestions are all important, and we should certainly include them in the plan. My
And
thought, for
Yeah.
our June meeting would be to really start all of this brainstorming, coming back from the housing forum, if we do hear feedback. But then honestly, June, I don't even wish to prepare a PowerPoint presentation, but rather just see all of our faces and just have a discussion where we think through what our menu of options might be for the affordable housing plan and what categories it falls into, whether it's, creation of new housing, working within existing housing, et cetera, and then seeing how to best organize it, whether it organizes itself thematically, whether it organizes itself as far as the house user. So as far as renter versus homeownership versus senior needs, we'll see how that all flushes out. But my thought for June is definitely brainstorming session, an agenda that's just us discussing what strategies should be in the plan.
Great.
And if we wanted to put in our plan some particularly local talk about, because the price of housing has gone up so quickly here, that we need really to get, for a housing plan to be effective, we have to get beyond this, just the state definition of affordable housing. I mean, if the average sales price last year was more than $500,000 per house, which I'm pretty sure it was,
Yeah.
then in effect, 90% of people, 90% of Americans are out of the Cornwall housing market. So again, we need something to say. It's not just, the government subsidized programs. It's, for a wide variety of people that we're concerned about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say, between now and our June meeting, if anyone has a concept that they want a little bit more research done, or precedent examples, if it's happened in Connecticut, anything along those lines, please loop me in. I'm constantly doing that research and happy to do that research. So if there's anything that pops into anyone's head as far as different models of housing, please let me know.
Here's a thought, because it was mentioned in the school and state finance report. The evidence, which is very scholarly and difficult to comprehend, that shows that increasing affordable housing brings economic benefits to the community that it's in. I think that would be a very potent argument to present.
Yeah, I do know that those points were raised, if I'm not mistaken, I believe his name is Sam Geffen. He was looking at the data of what it means. And I think it's honestly touched upon in that video as well. But that's definitely a really important piece.
It's more than just creating housing so our children can afford to live here, or so that we could increase diversity in the town. It's because it would benefit the town economically. It's part of presenting all the positives.
All right. Well, do we need to so I think the housing schedule looks good.
Chairman, do you want me to recap your suggestions again of the housing forum?
Sure.
Okay, so what I have in my notes, and please jump in if I've missed anything. An overview of the requirements, that would be me. So why the plan? And then we have planning and zoning, that would be Anna. An overview of what the Housing Corporation is up to, that would be Maggie. And then we have Beth O'Donnell for just discussing various housing types, examples of affordable housing. We have the potential to have a representative from National Iron Bank to discuss a first-time homeowner's financing option. And then it looks like, Gordon, you had mentioned Heather Deneen to discuss the impact of housing costs in Cornwall specifically.
Yeah, and we talked about Ingrid doing like a regional
Regional.
overview, so I haven't quite figured out the batting order yet on how this is most effective, whether to go regional down to local or local up to regional, or, you know, whatever, but we'll figure out something that's rational about, you know, how do we get all this pieces together, but, you know, something along those lines, I think would be good.
Perfect.
And again, I hear what Anna's saying about trying to, you know, accentuate the creative and the positive, and so maybe have the people with the most experience actually building or doing stuff in the market right now, sort of towards the end, and then, you know, build to that point.
And
Good, so-
I would like to make a plug for having whatever bullet points we want to give people, we want people to give them those bullet points before the actual meeting.
Absolutely.
That's what we
Like
need.
as an attachment to the announcement of the meeting. So that people have a chance to think about it.
That's
Right.
great.
Okay. So then what we'll do is we'll try to get, we'll try to get something out, you know, ahead of the meeting there. And yeah, because we do, in the age of Zoom now, we do have lists of people, and everybody that signs on to the meeting can then get sent the attachment when we get, you know, when we
Right.
get the list of people that are interested, so we can do that.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
can have those draft slides prepared early in May for rearranging and refleshing and enhancing with graphics, etc. So those slides will really be our basis.
So, Jill, do you think each speaker should just say a couple of their most important points and do it that way? Could be hard to like condense, you know, 2 or 3 minutes into, you know, half dozen words, but maybe.
I was thinking more about the statistics and the other,
Right.
and the sort of visual representation of them. Just
Yeah.
so people have the background. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about a situation where literally a young person can't afford to live in Cornwall. Let's say live with their parents.
Yeah.
And just so people have an idea of what we mean when we say we need more housing in Cornwall.
Yeah, good. And if you have any of those key statistics, anybody has those key statistics, please forward them on to either Janelle or me.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, there are places where they're all summarized actually, and the trick is just to extract them.
Yeah.
And create a nice one pager.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So I can, this is a draft. I can pull up, there was a draft it was a data assessment recap from all of the data that we had reviewed. I'd be happy to pull that up right now just to give you a sense. And the sources can be cited on the slide to give it even more.
Right.
So this is what was pulled from all the various data points that we talked about during that data presentation. That was at the second meeting, I do believe. So this
Yes.
sort of in summary.
yeah.
I think there were better ones.
Yeah, you know, in looking at this now, I'm thinking I'd like to see more numbers. So
Well, also, this is something for people who already are interested and know something about housing, whereas what you have to do is create a set of data that everyone in Cornwall can look at and say, oh, wow, things are really not so great.
mhm, mhm.
I think from what we have, with any of us who are interested in sending Janelle suggestions, we can make a very effective one pager.
Yeah.
Yes, I
There were
think so.
some good visualizations that, you know.
Ideal. Great.
Yeah, I saw Priscilla's on the call too. I mean, just even the real estate data for the last year says a lot. you know, as far as what's the average house going for? How does that compare the year before? You know, how many houses are for sale right now? I mean, the inventory is half of what it was a year ago. The rentals, I think somebody said the lowest rent right now is
None, right?
there's none, or there's some for $3,000 to $4,000 a month or something. But I mean, that's like the first time there's been no houses for rent. I mean, just saying that there is no room at the inn. I think, I mean, that's what the people are, I mean, I get these flyers, that's what it's saying. Unless you're paying $5,000 a month or something, that's absolutely new. I think also some of those things, like the waiting list for Bonnybrook and stuff being 2 years, and the average vacancy is 2. You know, there's 2 spots in 2 years, whatever. I mean, any of these places has a long waiting list on them.
Great.
Good. All right. Any other thoughts about the forum? Okay. Any other comments from the committee members? Thoughts? And again, if there are people, you know, I'm sure there'll be comments that come out, you know, the day of, and if there are people that have perspectives on that, that's good too.
I have one thought. It might be interesting, just Anna, for your presentation to include the inclusionary housing provisions, even though it doesn't satisfy what the state looks at as affordable housing, but the regulations that put forth an effort for like the attainable housing, the attainable housing law, I think just to bring that into the public discussion. So there's an understanding of the distinction between what the state's recognizing as affordable, along with efforts that the town has made for attainable housing. Because they are very unique as far as the parcel program goes and how zoning plays into that.
Okay, great.
Hey, Mag, I don't know if you know, but does Cornwall have more parcel houses than any other town around? We've got to be up
I think
there.
Litchfield may have more. Litchfield got off the ground, 5 or 10 years before we did.
Okay, but at least we can be the number 1 in Region 1. Something.
Yeah.
But I was talking to one of my fellow first selectmen, and he did want to pass on that he wished his town had all the housing varieties that we have here. So that's something to not be lost sight of. So good. Okay, anything else on this? Sounds like we got some work to do in the next month, but I think it's timely. I think it'll be well attended. So any other comments from the committee on the agenda items? Anyway, thank you all for your input in making this forum better. So now we're down to public comments. Any comments from the public? Is John there?
Yeah, he's there.
Oh, I see. One hand up from Nancy.
Unmute yourself.
So unmute.
You're muted.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you all for working on this project, which just from my short time of being here full time, I see that there is a great need for more housing, especially for younger folks if we want to attract them and have them stay. I was really appreciative of Jill's comment, and I think Maggie and Anna touched on this too, is that we really need to educate our town about the need. I think there's a lot of denial about that in Cornwall, and we have to make that need known, that there are young people who've had jobs here in Cornwall, couldn't find housing, and have had to move to other towns and leave the job that they had here. So there are jobs available, but people can't find a place to live. Maybe that's a real factor of COVID, but I think it's going to be the real world in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think you have to say it over and over again, because people have a house, everything looks good, but we lose people every year. And, you know, young people, old people, older people have, you know, spent a lot of time here, and then they get older and they have to downsize, and that's not an option. So again, I think we can articulate that. And I think the idea of having a handout, something that maybe we can even put into the Chronicle the following month, is a good thing. Again, because it's fine to talk amongst yourself, but if we can really put some data out there, it becomes more than just an exercise. Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Leila?
Oh, yes, thank you, Jonathan. My question, I guess, has occurred to me on the difference between affordable housing and attainable housing. Seems to me if you can't afford it, then you can't attain it. So I'm missing a definition.
Well, I'll let Janelle answer that one.
I can pop in, yeah. So Leila, to make that distinction, affordable housing is recognized by the state's definition. So that's 30%, the standard that the state has used is 30% of the area median income based on Litchfield County. Yeah. And that's adjusted for household size.
Well, that's
the household size. That's thinking that the threshold of what one should spend all of their housing costs, bills, taxes, etc., is 30% of their income. And that's what the state sort of recognizes as that threshold. And then attainable housing, as far as, and Maggie, I might need you to jump in on this one, but attainable housing is based upon, I believe is it 100% of the area median income?
Right.
Yeah.
At least if you're talking about parcel program, I don't know whether P&Z defines it differently for their attainable lot, but parcel program is 100%.
Yeah, so the planning and zoning regulations within the town of Cornwall do define attainable housing based upon Cornwall Housing Corporation, that then has their category of attainable housing, which is based upon 100% of the area median income in Litchfield County.
How was that, Leila? Did we get?
Oh, sort of. Are both programs, are both types of housing subsidized by a government agency? I think affordable housing at that 30% level, often there's a contribution from the federal government to help with the rest of the costs.
Yeah, no, that's correct. And actually, to be recognized by the state as such, it does need to remain protected in some way. So whether it is, federally assisted, state funded, or permanently protected by a deed restriction. So that's what goes into that state definition of affordable housing, which is based on that 80% of area median income.
Okay.
Then,
well, thank you.
Yeah, and Lila, there's another whole section of housing too that we're concerned about, which is sometimes called workforce housing. And because people in the trades often make more than this amount of money for these definitions, but still they can't afford to live in the place where they work. So, that's another whole group of things. As the price of housing goes up, we have to have more and more words to define the housing we're trying to achieve to allow for a balanced community.
And you can always change your status by having another child.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
I have a question. It's Carolyn Nastro. I was just wondering, has there ever been a program in Cornwall where like, homeowners are encouraged to rent their properties at lower prices, like some kind of fund or some kind of program that basically the people renting the properties rent them at a lower price? That's my first question. And my second question is, how many lots are still available with the Cornwall Housing Corporation that could be built? And if there are lots, I remember Maggie mentioned some issues with that, if we could build those, or when the timeline could be to build those, and how many of those are available.
There are currently 2 lots that aren't built on, and there are people looking at both of them. We don't actually build on the lots. It's the homeowner that builds on them. And then there are the 2 lots on Ginny Potter's land, which we talk confidently about, but doesn't actually belong to us yet. So that is a little bit in the future. I mean, I think Ginny it's about to be deeded to us, but not yet. And again, we have people on the waiting list who are interested in those as well.
Thank
The
you.
first
That's
question
for- that's
about
for
the rental business. There is a rental program, I believe it's called the Clifton Reed Fund in town that I think the Housing Corporation.
No, that's just relief. That's rent relief.
That's rent relief, but does it help people pay rent, I think?
No. Well, I think that what Caroline was asking was, is there a program that encourages people to rent out their own houses? And I don't think there is. I mean, one thing that exists on the state level is that if people have an accessory apartment that is rented and they want it to count as capital A affordable housing, they have to put a deed restriction on, or whatever restriction on the rent that has to go on the land records, and it has to be for some rather long time, like 20 years, I think. Anyway, it's kind of an unreasonable expectation, particularly when you consider that most landlords in Cornwall are probably kind of long in the tooth anyway. They're not going to restrict their rentals for way into the future. In other words, I don't know of anybody who's done it, Caroline, but it is a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
And there are a lot of what Janelle had a term for it last time of spontaneously occurring affordable housing or something like that.
Organically occurring.
Yeah, which is just people who are charging a reasonable rent in any case, but those don't appear on any statistics. It's just something that you know about.
Is there any room in Cornwall, any wiggle room to use property tax incentives to help people make decisions about affordable accessory apartment rentals?
My feeling is property assessments are all set by state standard. And there are some renter relief programs that people can actually get some relief from rents. But as far as the appraisal prices, I think those are pretty well uniform across the state as far as what you get.
I mean, there are other jurisdictions. I don't know if this is in Connecticut law, but you can give homeowners their tax exemptions that you can get. Property owners can get if they agree to rent their property for, again, it depends, it varies on the term. I mean, sometimes it is 20 years or 30 years. Sometimes it's less than that. So I don't know, it might be worth looking at whether that kind of program is allowable in Connecticut. The other thing is there are housing choice vouchers as well. I mean, that's the other thing, right? There's federal rent vouchers that people can use. And as I understand it, that would count towards the official state affordable, even though.
Be like Section 8?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but we have Section 8 people who are counted even outside of Cougar.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's another way to sort of rent you're renting your unit at sort of, I mean, you get a market rate or fair market rate, but the tenant is only paying 30% of their income.
Perhaps more of us need to know about this. I didn't know about that.
How many people are in Cornwall now about who take advantage of that? Do you know, Maggie?
I think there were a couple at Cougarman, and remember last time we were talking about why the numbers didn't add up to, there were like 36 units that were counted in Cornwall, and we could only account for 28 between Cougarman and Bonnybrook. And Janelle said she thought that those were either people with CHAFA loans around town or people who were using their Section 8 vouchers and renting from a private person. But, nobody has to record that with anybody. So it's sort of hard for us to know who those are or where they are.
Yeah, they do actually have to be recorded to
the
but federal government, but not to Cornwall.
Yeah. So the Affordable Housing Appeals List, they do get the information about the number of, whether it's CHAFA mortgages or tenant rental assistance, but they don't trace the address. And they do get that from, let me see, I'm looking into Cornwall right now just to see, it looks like they have 2 under tenant rental assistance currently on the 2020 list. And then it looks like there's 6 under that CHAFA mortgage. So that's just not traced by address, and that gets confirmed every year when the new list gets updated.
And that's why we have 36 instead of 28.
Yeah, but back to Ingrid's point about efficiency units and tax incentives. I've yet to see that for Connecticut, and I think it will be really interesting, like how that evolves because of the greater conversation around affordable housing at the state level. So we'll see if new incentives.
Certainly a bomb coming for tax incentives if they ever get that passed.
We'll see what's to come.
Yeah,
because that's a big issue that's being debated right now in the legislatures. What do they call accessory apartments? They're
ADUs, so accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, and whether to make those by right under Connecticut zoning or make them by, and I believe in most towns, what is it? There's like 169 towns. There's 100 towns that allow them by right. There's 55 that allow them with special permit, and there are 14 that don't allow them. So the question is whether just to allow them as a by right or not. So, that certainly has gotten people's attention as a way to increase housing.
We've talked about that in P&Z at one time.
Will you allow them by right if it's in the house and by special permit if it's an accessory dwelling, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
the owner occupation requirements in there for this, for accessory in Cornwall.
Yep. And I'd like to point out that they are not the solution to the problem as they might appear, because many people build what they say are accessory apartments, but they're really guest cottages, or, you know, they're not used, they're not rented, in other words.
Right.
Yeah, not long-term.
They're not
Can we-
rented at
can we-
all. They're
can we back
used,
up?
but not rented.
Mm.
But did you just say, Janelle, that the owner has to actually occupy the accessory apartment, or they can rent
One or
it
the
out?
other.
One or the other
They have to
current,
be in the house or the thing.
yeah,
Yeah, they have to be on the premises, one way or another.
And that seems to be fairly general through the state, and that
Yeah,
there isn't a big pushback against that restriction. People
right.
don't seem to think that that's unfair.
Okay, any other public comments? All right, so hearing none, we'll work on our one-page flyer or two-page flyer. And get your good ideas into Janelle to coordinate that. And I think we're good for
yeah,
now.
Mark,
You'll send us that link? You'll send
Yes.
us the link to all the info?
the link to both the video as well as the webpage with all of our information. Yeah,
Yes.
including this, including the slides that were brought on the screen today. And just a reminder, so mark your calendars for May 24th at 7 p.m. as opposed to 4.
Right, and Janelle, do you have Beth O'Donnell's email?
I do,
Great, so could you send her that stuff too, so she has things? Great.
absolutely. And Gordon, are you anticipating an hour and a half or so for that evening?
Sure,
Great.
subject to change, but I think if we, again, I like the idea of getting all these things and then having public comment and then show the movie and then have another round of public comment after the movie, you know,
Nice.
mix it up a little bit.
Mhm.
And I like the idea that it's a good suggestion of getting a follow-up thing. And with that also, we can list, you know, the movie and links and stuff. So great.
I mean, if there is a potential future resident as well, that could be an interesting perspective as to someone that wishes to live in Cornwall but may not be able to.
Oh. Tearjerker.
Yeah.
Their name is Legion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or have people that actually have been able to stay here because of some efforts. That's a good, the other side. So let's see.
I was gonna say, I live in an accessory dwelling unit, and I just really lucked into it, and I would be living at my parents' house probably when I'm in my 40s.
There you go.
Mhm.
All right, we'll tone that presentation up, John, and you can have your own. That's it. Yeah, you speak for many.
Mhm. Yes, I looked into some housing myself. Mhm.
Yeah, great. All right, well, thank you all, and we'll be working our way to the forum.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks
Okay.
everyone for your time.
Okay, take care, folks.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Jill.
Bye.
Bye-bye.